Hello there and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevičius. Today's guest is Ad Wammes, a Dutch composer of numerous instrumental, chamber and choral works who recently has published a fascinating piece called Ride in a High-Speed Train for Organ. As a composer, he in earlier times wrote music for 5 Sesame Street albums, film and theater music. But his piece for organ, Miroir, from 1989, meant his international breakthrough. It has been played all over the world by such renowned organists as Thomas Trotter, David Sanger and the late John Scott, and has already been recorded 13 times on CD. In today's conversation, Ad will reveal his compositional process and give us a glimpse into the world of ideas which inspired Ride in a High-Speed Train. Let's go to the show. Ad, I'm so delighted that you are joining this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vidas.
I'm so fascinated by your pieces, by your music for organ, and you know you're so generous in creating these and putting them online and letting people get a glimpse into your artistic world. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, because it's for me. It's very nice to know the people who I write my music for, and I think the internet is a very good medium.
Yes,
to have direct contact.
Yes, direct contact with your listeners. That's what today's world is all about, right? And today we'll be talking about in depth about your recent organ composition, which is called Ride in a High-Speed Train. Very curious and picture-evoking title, I would say. High-speed train, right? These trains which go 300 kilometers an hour in France, in Europe, right?
Yes.
And you wrote a piece about that. I will be curious about the origin of the piece, but let's start from the beginning, okay? Can you tell us a little bit about how you became interested in organ music, in organ as an instrument, things like that?
Well, my wife is an organist, and when we were at the conservatory, that's the high school for music, when she had to do her exam, she had to play a modern organ piece, and so she asked me for an organ piece, and I wrote my first organ piece for my wife. The name of this piece is My Top. And then the second piece I wrote in 1989. So 1989.
Yes, 89.
89. Yes, that was Miroir, and it was composed for a friend of ours, Stephen Taylor. He's from English origin, and he got a job at the Nicolai Church in Utrecht. Utrecht is a city in Holland, and he had to give an opening concert, and he wanted to play a new composed piece, and he asked me to compose a piece, and that happened to be result in Miroir.
Yes.
And Miroir is in fact, the origin of the piece is in fact something quite ordinary. There has been a television program on Dutch television a couple of years ago, in which I tell about the origin of Miroir, and unfortunately, it's only in Dutch, but maybe, when you look at, maybe you can understand something of it.
Sure. So,
You know?
let me interrupt a little bit because
Yes,
our
of course.
listeners are probably wondering what is miroir. It's probably mirror, right? The word means in
Yes,
French
yes.
mirror. And
Mirror.
as I'm listening this piece just a moment ago, I noticed how calming effect it has on me. I was
Uh-huh.
perhaps a little bit nervous before this conversation, a little bit stressful, day or
Uh-huh.
something. But once I opened this video and started to listen to your music, all my stress went away. It's such a
Oh,
profound
great.
feeling, and it's very rare that the modern composer of living composer of today can create such a music of such a depth and you know profound impact, but a healing impact, I would say, even healing, right?
Ah, oh, wow.
So
Thank you.
we'll talk about how you, of course, came up with these techniques which help listeners to calm down, right? I guess lots of repetitive motion, right? Lots of perpetuum mobile, so to say,
Yeah.
perpetuum mobile. Interesting concept, right? So,
Okay.
Adam, how much your music is influenced by, let's say, minimalism techniques, or how much is not? Maybe it's much different now from it, right?
Well, it's hard to say. People tend to place my music in the minimal. They say it's minimal music, but I don't agree with that. My music is has been influenced a lot by symphonic pop groups like Gentle Giant. It was a profound English group in
Mm-hmm.
the 70s, 80s. And what they did was a kind of chamber music, but then for pop group.
Mm-hmm.
And they used a lot of how the, complementary rhythms. They worked a lot with that, and I tried to make use of that in my own compositions as well because I liked it so much.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And for instance, Miroir, it has a repetitive mode. In fact, there's one hand playing the same pattern, the same bar from beginning till end.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in fact the result of something that happened in my studio. And
Yes.
I can tell you, maybe let me tell you a few words about Miroir. You know, at first I had this idea for the first bar. I played it on my piano,
Yes.
and then I went to my studio and played it with an organ sound. Then I went looking for another organ sound in my library. And while I was looking for that sound, I had my computer in the repetitive mode. So I heard this one bar again and again and again and again. And while I was looking, a melody popped up in
Mm-hmm.
my head, and it was only that at the end I had only had to change something to the left hand, and I could keep the right hand the same. So
It's
I was thinking,
brilliant.
well, that's curious. Let's see how far we can go.
Uh-huh.
So by with this, I mean, I started looking for if I could maintain this same repetitive mode, repetitive bar in the one hand, and placing other things against it. And wanted to see how far I could go without it being boring,
Yes.
and it was my goal that it wouldn't be noticeable, not hearable, that I use the same pattern over and over and over again, because that would be boring, I think. So what I did was sometimes I play above this pattern, sometimes I play in between this pattern, and then when you do this, you hear something like shadow lines, which are not there, but your ears tend to connect notes there are in each neighborhood. Your ears tries to connect them,
Wonderful.
and then and then I place the notes down this pattern. And so in this way, I mean with a mirror, the mirror stays the same. It's only what you put opposite of the mirror that changes the image of the mirror.
Very, very
Well,
clever
I hope you
idea.
understand.
Yeah, of course, I will put the links to the videos of your composition so that listeners can really listen in and understand what we're talking about. But
Yes,
for starters, in order to understand your style, probably we need to talk about meditation, right? Because a little bit I felt that your music, especially Miroir, is like because it has a repetitive mode, and
yeah.
it puts the listener and the performer into one mindset,
Ah,
like in a prayer in a
ah,
meditation. This moment has a calming effect, I think.
ah.
Am I right?
Well, you know, I don't. When I make music, I try to compose as well as I can, and I always want to find things that are not yet been discovered,
Yeah.
because I'm curious for that. And then when I find something beautiful, I always want to share it with other people. But I don't compose with my mind set up to, well, I have to make these notes because people like it. And it's the other way around. I try to make the music that I like, and of course, I hope that other people like it as well.
Sure, that's the main idea. You're doing for others, but in reality, you're doing it for yourself,
Yeah,
right? As an
yeah.
artist, you let other people have a glimpse into your world, but you're not selling yourself out. Now, you are
No,
you are
no.
being generous and have integrity with your ideas and ideals, with your beliefs, and if listeners like it, that's good. If they're not
Yeah.
don't like it, maybe they don't belong to your circle, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all got our favorite music and styles and so on. For instance, within the jazz music, when you say, "Do you like jazz music?" I would say, well, a couple of years ago, I would say no, but now I would say, well, I like the music of Ibrahim Malouf very much, and you know, it's there's only good music and bad music, but and a taste hasn't. Everybody has a certain taste for certain kind of music, but that doesn't say that a certain type of music is bad or good. You never can say it, because there has been bad music in jazz music, but there has been bad music in
Yes,
classical music as
and it
well.
happens that a person can start liking one sort of music after many years of
Yes,
disliking it,
that
right?
happens.
That
Yeah.
happens because the person the character develops, the taste develops,
Yes. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
mindset also broadens, the perspective broadens, and your curiosity probably also expands, and you
Yes.
take everything that you meet in life, you see in life, and that makes you, of course, a better person and a better composer as well. Am I right?
Well, I hope so.
So wonderful, Ad. I think our listeners have to understand one thing. A lot of modern music of by living composers of 21st century composers um, do not don't or doesn't sound so to say nice, don't
Yeah,
doesn't sound
yeah,
acceptable to our general audience.
yeah.
Which of course is exception with your music. Your music, of course, is directly connected with the listener. Whether it's a professional organist, musicologist, or a person from the street, I think it can find these beautiful tones and modes and rhythms,
Hmm.
perpetuum these repetitive modes, much fascinating, very fascinating,
Yeah.
and it's not at all dissonant and harsh. I think it has very interesting color in it.
There are dissonance in my music, there are consonants as well,
Yeah.
and that's what I miss with very much modern composers, that they don't know they don't feel the difference between a consonant and a dissonant.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope you understand what to say. When you play a chord like C, I will try to keep it simple. When you play a chord C, E, G, then when you play the melody with the tones C, E, G, it's all consonant. There's nothing disturbing.
Yeah.
But for instance, when you play a G in the melody, then you feel a little bit of friction because this note wants to become, in the end, a consonant.
Yeah.
So it tends to, you can go to E or to C, or maybe you can place another dissonant to it, but then again, you have to go to a consonant because the consonants are the magnetic fields for the dissonance.
Yeah, they connect the dissonance to the consonances, and your
Yes,
music.
your dissonance, they tend to go, they are attracted by the magnetic fields of the C and the E and the G.
Aha, I see that. Yes,
I
right.
see.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't see much of this sensibility with a lot of composers nowadays.
Yes.
It's very much conceptual music, and I worked a couple of years for the Het Orgelpark in Amsterdam,
Yes.
and because the busy drone. That's a mechanical organ, which is nowadays is standing there. There are being made new compositions for this organ, and they asked me to see if it's. Well, I'm the in between. I've been for a couple of years the in between the composer and the guy who made the organ books. So I looked at the scores and see if it was all possible, and then most of the time I had to change a lot. But I missed, it was many times that I felt that this guy or this girl is not doesn't hear what he has actually written, because at some points sometimes it was so difficult, and so many tones in it, and people tend to make mistakes, and then sometimes people totally forgot that the organ was a transposing instruments. That this means that the sound is different than what you've written,
Uh-huh.
and and then they said, place it some tones up, and that's okay, and sometimes, you know.
I
I,
have this idea. Maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of modern composers who write very harsh sounding and too dissonant music, maybe
Yeah.
they like to write something new that hasn't been written before. And of course, tonality, the consonances were explored throughout the centuries very much.
Yes.
And of
Yes.
course, with the rise of later modern techniques, composers thought maybe I could discover something new outside the tonal
Mm.
areas, outside the modes. Maybe I can write very chromatic music and
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
interesting discoveries right there. But what you are doing, and others in this field also, you are rediscovering tonality, right? You are doing new things with tonality, with modes, not necessarily major and minor, but you're writing in Lydian mode, for example, in other
Yeah.
Phrygian modes, basically in double harmonic minor, which reminds me of Balkan music, right?
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
you do this sort of experiments with old material, but in a new way.
Yeah,
Am I right?
no, I don't see it as an experiment.
Uh-huh.
It's me just, and it pops out, and someone somewhere I got I was influenced by this music, I think, and well,
Uh-huh.
it comes out this way, and sometimes it's well. It comes out this way, and when I think it's good, then I write it down, and you know, I, I never know what kind of chords I'm going to use. It's uh, it's a result of what I have written, and then sometimes when I look at my own scores, I see, oh well, that's interesting. I didn't know what I was doing, but
Exactly,
yes,
exactly.
it's
Uh,
interesting.
you know,
You know, I try to write down what I hear, and so I try to listen very good to what's happening in my head.
it sounds like you're having some unconscious processes in
Yes.
your head, which not necessarily are connected with your mental brain basically
No.
thinking
No.
processes. It happens maybe in the right side of the brain, not
Yeah.
necessarily in the
Yeah.
left.
You
And
know, I got something strange to tell you. As I told you, I opened my website in 2005, and in 2008 I had my a new piece for organ ready, and then I informed my the organist that in the past had ordered scores from my website, and there was a mail to someone living in Stavanger. It's in Norway. And the next day, I got a mail from him. His name is Ivan Sarajilievich, and he told me, "Well, what a coincidence! Because last night we were talking about giving a composer a commission, because this year, 2008, it was." Uh, Stavanger was cultural capital of Europe,
mhm,
and he asked me to compose a mass for voice choir and string quintet and organ, and then well, I started composing, and it was a piece that I immediately. It was very easy for me to write this piece down. I just let myself go and compose it, and then I thought to myself, well, this is the piece which was most easy for me to compose, and why? And then I remembered that when I was young, I always went up to the organ, where because my mother was an organist and my father was a very good singer, and he sang in the choir, and I always went up and sit next to the people singing in the choir, and because I so I thought, Well, from when I was very young till my well, maybe 15 or 16, when I was 16 years old, I always heard this music. It was Catholic music, and well, it has influenced me, and because well, that was my explanation for how easy for me it was to compose a mass. I hope do you understand it?
Yes, easy, very easy to compose, right?
Yes, because it seemed to be somewhere in my unconsciousness. I had,
Unconsciousness, yes.
yeah,
You know, I have an idea that a muse. You know what a muse is? Maybe our
yes, yes,
spirit flies by your window, and
yeah,
if she sees you ready at the table with your pencil or a computer, if you work with computer, ready
yeah.
for work, maybe she gives you an inspiration. If you're not ready, if you're doing something else, then inspiration is not there, perhaps. Yes.
Maybe.
It's a complicated, of course,
Yeah,
procedure.
yeah, but inspiration is also like sport, because when you know when you want to become a very good athlete, you have to work, and when you want to become a composer, you have to work, and you must be in shape to receive the muse.
Exactly. To receive this inspiration, you have to work
Yes,
for it.
you
You
have to
have to
work
work. Yeah.
because when I haven't composed for maybe a couple of weeks, and when I start composing, what comes up the first 2 days, I usually throw away, and and then sometimes, at the end of the day, when I close my computer and sit by my piano, and then suddenly it comes pops up, and wow, this is it. you know you have to give Muse a chance to meet you, but she will only come when she sees that you are a hard-working man.
Exactly. Exactly. And you have to be very, very, you know, eager to let it go, because you don't control this process, right? When the
No,
inspiration come, when these ideas will come, you don't even know, probably. You
no,
don't
no.
expect. When you expect, it doesn't come, and when you're
Yeah,
not expecting,
yeah,
it
yeah,
does come. It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
paradox, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's most of the time when you in the moments of relaxation. At the end of the day, when you close the computer, so you say, "Well, I stop working." Then you pop down at the piano and then just lingering along. Then, oh yes, that's oh, that sounds good. Oh, well,
Is that
and
how you is that how you created your recent piece, right, in a high-speed train as well?
No, I will tell you how I wrote this piece.
Uh-huh.
By the way, it's not. It's a piece from the origin of the piece is from 1993.
93. Yes,
Yes, the
the
origin,
origin.
because it was originally written for mechanical dance organ.
Yes, mechanical. Can you explain our listeners what a mechanical dance organ is?
Do you know what a hurdy-gurdy is?
Yes, hurdy-gurdy. Yes, mechanical
Yeah,
instrument which plays over and over, right?
yeah, yeah. But a dance organ is it's a kind of very big. Uh, uh, they call it also pyramid in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big instrument. Well, let's say 7 meters or 8 meters wide and 2.5 meters high,
Mm-hmm.
and it in Belgium. Belgium is when you go from Holland to France, you go through a country named Belgium.
Yes.
And in Belgium, in the beginning of the 20th century, when there was no when there were no how do you call it, Laxbeplaten, long play discs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it is?
LP probably, right?
LPs, yeah. But just before the time, people danced in music halls,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this mechanical organ who played the popular tunes of
Uh-huh.
those days.
Yes. And it had the
It
mechanisms.
was a kind of, let's say, old-fashioned jukebox.
Jukebox, but mechanical, right?
Yes.
All mechanical.
All mechanical, yeah.
Excellent, wonderful. So you wrote a piece for it, right? For this,
Yes.
it's called Busy Drone, right?
That's the name of the instrument.
Yes.
And the piece was called TGV, which means Train Grande Vitesse. That's French
Uh-huh.
for a high-speed train.
Wow,
And
that's
and
yes.
and I use this name because in those days this train was for the first time riding through Europe.
Yes, novelty.
Yes, and I want to tell you something about how I made the piece.
Yes,
Maybe
please.
that's interesting
Very
because
interesting.
I went to visit this dance organ, which then stood in the Stedelijk Museum. That's a museum for modern art in Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to listen to it, and also brought with me a so-called DAT recorder. It's
Digital audio tape, yes.
digital audio tape, yes. Oh, very good of you.
Uh-huh. I know that.
You know that.
Yeah.
And the man who played the organ, he told me, well, I have a book called Gamma, which let you hear all the different registers, note by note. And I said, wow, that's great, because I have a studio, and in this studio I have a sampler, they call it.
Uh-huh, yes, sampler.
A sampler, yes. So I recorded this organ, and it took me about a week to put all these sounds in my sampler, in my computer, as to say. And so, and in the end, I was able to hear what would sound on this organ. And then I started composing, and at a certain point, I thought, when I compose, a lot of times I have in my mind a sort of landscape or something visual, and I had in my mind a train going through an ever-changing landscape.
Yes.
Because there's something which goes on and on, it stays the same, but the landscape changes.
Yeah.
You go around the corner and you are in a different landscape. And I was thinking about a train going through this landscape. And this train was going through a landscape in what they used to call Yugoslavia.
Yeah, Balkans.
In the Balkans, yes. And my wife and I, when we were young, we used to make long holidays, and we cycled. And we cycled through Europe. And one day we were in Yugoslavia, and the roads were so bad that
Uh-huh.
that I had a broken spoke in my wheel, in my back wheel, and well, when one spoke is broken, the second will break within a few minutes, and that happened. So I had problems with my bike, and I dropped by a house and asked them, the people, if they could help me, and they were very friendly people. And we stayed there for one night, and in the evening, the man was a professor at the high school, but he also was a musician playing the accordion. And in the evening, he put a map of Yugoslavia on the table, and he pointed a certain district, and then he played something on his accordion from that district, and then he showed another district, and then he played something from that district, and that came up my mind when I was composing this piece. So that helped me to go on with this ongoing rhythm and this ever changing landscape.
Wonderful. So you sort of imagine that you are going through this Balkan countryside with the train, and these ideas, musical ideas, also came into your mind, and you started to shaping them into music, into notes, and creating different rhythms, probably 5/4 meter, right?
Yes.
Very curious offbeat, basically. Writing.
Yes.
Strange to play, even, not only to write, but very fun to listen to.
But very difficult to play.
Very difficult.
But it that was no problem, because it was for a mechanical instrument.
Yes,
so I could do anything what I wanted. But nowadays, this dance organ stands in Het Orgelpark.
Yes,
that's
the organ park in Amsterdam, right?
The organ, yes, a very nice organ venue. And an organist came up to me when I was there, and he asked me, well, can you make an arrangement of this piece for normal organ? And I said, well, I don't know. I will have to look if it is possible. And then I started looking and working on it. And, well, it was possible. But I found out that sometimes, many times, the deviation of the certain parts is different at the same time. For instance, when we, let's say in bar 10, we have 3-3-2-2 in one hand, and at the same time, the other hand has 2-2-3-3.
Oh, polyrhythmic ideas.
Yes, and the pedal has 2-2-2-2-2. Oh, that's very difficult.
Like it's in 5/4 meter, right?
And then it's 5/4 meter.
8 notes per measure, right?
Yeah.
And you start dividing the 8 notes differently. 3-3-2-2 or 2-2-3-3 or 2-2-2-2-2.
Yeah.
And I can imagine how difficult it is to play that way.
Yeah. But have you heard about Thomas Trotter?
Of course, yes.
Okay,
a fantastic organist.
Fantastic organist, and Thomas ordered the piece, and I sent it to him, and then he reacted, well, I'm used to a lot of music, but this is very difficult, but because I can't feel at the same time different variations, different different deviations at the same time. He said, I can't feel da 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 pa 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 pa. Well, at the same time, ta 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 ta.
Yes.
In the other hand.
And in the pedals, 2-2-2-2.
And yes, for instance, and this changes.
Uh-huh.
as with when you pop into another landscape, the deviations change.
Yes.
So you know, he asked me. Boots and Hawks has published it, but
Uh-huh.
it was at first I published it myself, and I had these different deviations written as a composer. Also thought, well, that's strange. 3 3 2 2, and then the 2 2 3 3 3 at the same time in the other hand, and 2 2 2 2 and the pedals, and I wrote it exactly this way. But after the Thomas reacted to this first printing of my own publication, and he told me, well, when it's going to be published by Boots and the Hawks, I think it's better to try to keep the deviations the same for both hands and feet, and then by using slurs at the correct places, and you can get the deviation which what you want to hear.
Uh-huh.
So I chose for that one, for that option, so that it would become a little bit easier to play.
Yes. I was thinking when you were talking about these rhythmical deviations about Indian music, Indian rhythmic ideas. Have Indian, for example, Tala musical rhythmic traditions
Oh,
have influenced you in any way?
yes. In fact, I studied tablas a couple of years.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yes,
So
but
that's 2 2 3 3 or 3 3 2 2 or
yeah,
2 2 2 2.
yeah, but
That's
I studied tabla about 10 years ago. So originally, this piece was written in 1993. So I no question, it wasn't influenced by tabla Indian music,
not
but
yet.
maybe by Balkan music. I
Uh,
think I think so.
uh,
Yeah.
because in Oriental music, of course, in Hindu
Yes.
tradition, these rhythmical ideas are very, very complex and fascinating. And when you were talking about this, I was thinking maybe he also was influenced a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe it's a different culture altogether. Then. So, but
Yeah.
wonderful, because in general, the effect of these rhythmical deviations when you're listening to a video or watching, right, well prepared piece is absolutely fantastic because you don't understand what's happening actually.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think when you're looking at the fingers of the organist, it's so easy, right? But in reality, it's unbelievably difficult to make these polyrhythmic ideas. And in fact, in order for our listeners from all over the world to understand what are we talking about right now, I can suggest, for example, this kind of exercise on the organ. For example, right hand can play a melody. Imagine 5/4 meter that Ad uses in this piece, and right hand plays a melody, maybe 10 notes or 20 notes, whatever you want. You can write down with pencil, right? And then
Yeah.
divide these 20 or 10 notes in a way that subdivisions are in 3 3 2 2, and then repeat 3 3 2 2.
Mm-hmm.
Basically it will be 5/4 meter, but in one measure will be 10/8 notes, but subdivided as 3 3 2 2. That's the right
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And take the same melody, or
Creates.
yes, and
Yes.
take the
You
another
know.
melody, and then in the left hand do the opposite, 2 2 3 3
Yeah.
subdivision, right? And the
Yes.
same happens in the pedals, right? only the same melody or a different melody in the same mode, for example, that it would sound nice. For example,
Well,
and choose 2 2 2 2 2 subdivision, completely different, right?
something. Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
that, and then try to play it, right? Try to play
yeah.
all 3 parts together. That's
Yeah.
unbelievably difficult, but the
That's
effect will
the
be very good.
difficulty. I think it compares the South American music, where the percussion group exists of 4 people,
Uh-huh.
each doing their own thing, their own deviation within the bars, and repeating it.
Yes.
And by hearing, mixing it all together, it's when it's good, it swings. And um, I think that's the same with this piece. I think it's influenced by me listening to salsa music.
Uh-huh. True.
Yes,
And of course, we have to remember that these drummers and from West Africa, of course, they also
yes,
use
yes,
different syncopations, but they do it in groups, like 4 people, 5 people, or
yeah,
in the case of your South American music, like 4 people. But the organist has to do it
yes.
alone.
One, yeah, yes, yeah,
That's
no,
what makes it exceedingly complex,
yeah.
but very
I'm
interesting.
so sorry, Fidas.
No, wonderful, wonderful. I'm so grateful that you wrote something that is exceedingly difficult to play, but sounds
Yeah,
deceptively simple. It's really
yeah, yeah,
sounds,
yeah,
when our listeners will listen to this piece, either right in a high-speed train or even the Miroir, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it sounds unbelievably simple, and the
yeah,
simplicity is genius, right? The sign
yeah,
of genius.
yeah.
But when you try
Thank
to
you.
play it's
Yeah.
something else.
Man. But recently I have composed something which is simple.
Uh-huh.
It
Tell us,
doesn't.
tell us, tell us. What are you working now on?
Oh, well, I will close the door because I hear a noise from downstairs.
Okay.
It's
And
okay.
while you
Well,
do this, I will talking about how important is to keep our listeners in mind when creating such a modern music, because of course a lot of modern composers forget our listeners and try to discover new things, and try to create something
yeah,
very harsh and dissonance. But what Ad does with this modal thinking in different modes and in different rhythms is extremely listeners friendly, and this is very rare in 21st century music. And it's very good that he keeps in mind his listeners. So so
yeah.
Ad,
Well,
are
as
you
a
there?
yeah, yes, I'm here again.
Good.
When you compose, you are a listener as well.
Hmm.
And I remember the saying of a teacher of mine. Um, um, he once, well, I heard it saying a couple of times, and this has been very important for me. He told me, don't try to keep to what you had in mind. He said, forget about that and try to listen what the music has to tell you. The music itself has something to tell you. So,
Uh-huh.
he wants you listen, 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 listen. What's happening? What's happening? Where
Yes.
does the sound want us to go?
We have
What?
to pay attention,
That's
right? Pay
something
attention.
you have to pay attention what you hear.
Wonderful. So, tell us a little bit, what is your next project? What are you working on and listening for and creating for?
Oh yes, that's a lot. What I did yesterday, that's maybe for the organist interesting, is there is an American composer and organist. His name is Carson Coleman. he has an ongoing project. He wants composers from all over the world to compose new pieces for chamber organ. This is a very limited organ of only one manual, consisting of 4 octaves and 1 note, so from C grade till D3. Yes, D3. So 4 octaves and 1 whole note. No pedals. And sometimes only one stop. So he wanted me to write 3 pieces for it, which would be possible to play on this kind of organ. And he wanted me to write pieces that were not difficult. He was looking for a certain difficulty, and so I composed my first piece and sent it to him, and to ask him if it had the right difficulty or easiness, whatever you want to call it. He said, "Well, that's exactly what I mean." So I made these other 2 pieces, and then when I was ready, I had a phone talk with Carson, and I told him, in fact, I want to publish it, and I will ask Boos and Hawks. So I asked Boos and Hawks, and they said, well, it's 2 little people who will be interested, 2 less music. And then Carson told me that he also worked for an American publisher, and that they would want to publish work, but they wanted at least 17 pages of music, or 16 pages. Well, no, then I thought, 5 to go, but there is a publisher who is interested. And I had something that was intended for piano, but which I hadn't finished. And I could make an arrangement for an organ, and I made another one. That were 2 enjoyable pieces, joyful pieces, I must say. And then, then I had 5 pieces.
Yes.
And then I thought, 3 more pieces to go. And at this point, I got a phone call from Andrew Canning, a befriended organist of mine, who lives and works in Uppsala, Sweden.
Yes.
And he told me, did you receive the news? I told him, I don't know what you're talking about. He told me, John Scott, the organist from New York, has died. Do you know John Scott?
Of course.
Yes. And I was very very sad to hear this news, and yes. Because I had many times I had contact with John, and it was such a nice man. And even the last concert that John gave was in Uppsala in Sweden, which has been a very important place for me, Uppsala. And I have phoned Andrew Kending half an hour before the concert and asked him to say hello to John and do him my best wishes, and wishing him a very good concert. And then, only 2 days later he died in New York.
Very sad.
Yes. So I was, I had John in my mind because it was such a kind man. Was never thinking, he was a really kind man, and for instance, why he was so, why he was kind big. Many years ago, he came to Holland and play in the Oude Kerk in Amsterdam, and that's the place where the Dutch composer
Sweelinck, right?
Sweelinck, yes, he used to work as an organist, and John was playing there. He would play the first piece I have written for organ is My Tor, that piece from 1981.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was asked to compose a work for choir and organ and harp and percussion. Yeah. And I was looking for a text, and I asked him, John, I have this commission, but they suggested a poem, but well, I'm looking for something else. And he said, well, I know a very good poem, and it's out on celestial music by Brian Patton. You must put music to this because it's such a fantastic text. And he told me that he was planning to make music himself one day. So I went looking for this text, and this text was absolutely fabulous. And what I did as a composer was, in fact, following the text and nothing more than that. Mm-hmm. And you know, this is a form of kindness which you seldom see with people, because when you know that you want to make music to a certain text, you keep it a secret. You don't tell other composers, well, you should take this text because it's great. Uh-huh. No, he didn't keep it for himself. He shared with other people.
But ultimately, we all should do this, because if we keep it to ourselves, nobody will know about it, right? It won't spread.
Yeah. John is dead now, and he never wrote a piece of music to Odom Celestial Music, and yeah.
So thank you so much, Ad, for your generosity, for sharing your ideas about your style, about your compositions, in particular about the high-speed train.
I'm sorry to interrupt, because we are talking about John Scott now. So far I have written five compositions for chamber organ, and then when John died, I had John in my mind for every day for a couple of weeks, and then every 2 days, and so it's now a little less. But the death of John influenced me a lot in composing these last 3 pieces.
So I think John would be proud of you.
I hope so.
Could hear you compose, and if he could play these pieces, he would be extremely proud of your writing, and extremely grateful for what you do.
Yeah.
As I am, of course. Thank you so much, Ad, for doing this work that matters to a lot of people around the world, and people who knew you from the piece that you wrote in 1989, the Miroir. Of course, that's the piece you became most famous in the world for, and then suddenly your reputation grew and grew wider and wider, and I wish you great success in other of course creative endeavors, and in the future as well, so that your muse, which would, for example, fly by your window, could see you sitting at the table or at the computer and getting ready to receive this inspiration from him.
Yes, I will open the window to let the muse in.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Fidas, I will keep you informed about the new developments.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. If you would like to know more about Ad Wammes, his compositions, and his piece ride in a high-speed train, please visit his website at adwammes.com. That's adwammes.com, and compositiecado.nl. That's compositieCadeau.nl. If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog Secrets of Organ Playing at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Pilkevičius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.